Yo. Everybody get up, we gotta slam down. You know we about to get going down. Welcome to the Space Jam. Do your dance, in a Space Jam. Alright, I forgot the rest. You better
Yo, what's up, boys? Welcome back to the Beyond Bounds podcast. This is going to be episode 8, I think, right? This is episode 8. This is episode 8 of the Beyond Bounds podcast. We're going to be talking about caffeine today because, dunkers use that sort of thing. So, we're just going to talk about our experiences first. I was actually not ready for this. No, I am ready for this. I'm going to talk about one of the sessions I've had real quick. And it was like, I took 400 milligrams of caffeine this day, and there was a lot of kids there. It's actually in the intro of this video. The dunk that I missed on 9-10.5, I missed it, and of my age, the kids they're my age. We call them kids, okay?
Legs touching them.
There was a lot of people.
We need to start over. What the fuck?
No, we don't. We don't need to start over. We can. No, you guys took it the wrong way. That's not my fault. Okay, it's in the intro of this video. There's a lot of people there. Okay, a lot of people, and I missed that dunk on 9-10. So then I switched over to 9-9.5. I got like 5 off the dribble dunks that day. And also, me personally, when I take 100 milligrams of caffeine, it lasts 12 hours. So I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I don't really take it too often. Like every other day at most when I'm like actually like healthy and training hard. But besides that, it'll usually affect my sleep and stuff. And then caffeine plus like adrenaline with a bunch of people, that will improve your performance. Pretty sure you guys have experiences with that, or at least Darshil does. So Darshil, you can go ahead with your experiences.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, in terms of my experience with it, I've had a lot of things in terms of caffeine. I usually take like around 120 to 340 milligrams of caffeine, depending on what my thing is. So if there are sessions where I'm feeling really bad and it's in the middle of a training cycle, I'll usually take that lower dosage of around like 120 milligrams. But then on sessions where I typically know that I'm going to have a high amount of adrenaline, or if I'm at the end of like a deload week, for example, or yeah, if I'm in the end of a deload week, I usually take the higher end of things. And at most, I've taken like 360 milligrams, and that was actually at the session that I did in December 14th with the SoCal Dunkers. And in that session, I had combined adrenaline from from some of the dunkers that were there, as well as the caffeine just helping me get to that
Who
point.
was there?
I'm gonna say it. Dom Gonzalez, CJ Champion, Billy Duran, Ryan Dukov. Let me make sure I got some of these people here. Alex Artizone. Sorry, I'm blanking right now.
You're good. That's honestly a good list right there.
There's got to be more. Oh yeah, for sure, Slinks. Yeah, I can't forget my homie Slinks.
That's the tall, skinny dude, right?
Yeah, he said he's gonna be dunking on higher rims a lot more now, so that's gonna be pretty interesting. But I'd say that in most cases, like usually 300 milligrams is the most that I would take, just because like the benefits that you would get from that much, honestly, after that, they don't really outweigh the cost at all.
Yeah.
So usually I would just like to stick with 300 these days. And like I said before, I might just reserve it to deload week performances, but case by case, I might do it for school or for work. In terms of
like I told you right now, you don't need to be using it too much.
Exactly, yeah. But it's like the caffeine that oh yeah. But like the caffeine that I've taken, I know that Juan mainly just uses caffeine pills, but I've had all assortments of things that I've used. I've used coffee before. I've used Rain energy drinks, Celsius, Goat Fuel, Rockstar, and out of all of those, most of them have been moderate in terms of what I've had. The only one I would never recommend for anyone that's in this space is Rain Energy. That thing gave me a lot of issues. And just in general, the drawbacks that I face for myself are chest issues, like gastrointestinal issues. And on really bad sessions where I'm not even jumping that great, it also has lead to increased anxiety and a lot of the times letting the worst of my impulses or emotions kind of control my jumps instead of trying to at least have some semblance of technique. And just in general, I think we'll talk about this more as we talk about some of the studies, but I typically take my caffeine a lot earlier in the day just to be able to mitigate a lot of the effects that you would have if you were to drink it later on in the day. And I think we'll talk about it more, but I operate off of the idea of caffeine having a half-life. So if I have like 300 milligrams in my system, 5 to 6 hours by estimate from now, it's you're still gonna have around 150 milligrams in. 5 to 6 hours after that, you're gonna have around 75 milligrams in, and then even after that, you're still gonna have around like maybe 37 and onwards. So yeah, in terms of caffeine, it's generally been beneficial, but there have been sessions where it's actually been really bad for me. A session that I did quite recently, actually, I think a week and a half ago, was where I consumed like maybe like around that lower dosage, like around 100 milligrams or so, but it still screwed up my gastrointestinal issues to a point where I wasn't having quality jumps. I was basically jumping, but I couldn't feel like I could push without straining myself, essentially. So
What
yeah, that's
exactly
my
does it
experience.
feel like?
So it's kind of
The
like a
gastrointestinal issues.
yeah, so it's kind of like a feeling of both having nausea and then also having constant palpitations that just constantly go around that tract. So every time I'm trying to push, right, every time I'm trying to brace, some part of that brace is let go of because of the fact that I'm trying to push through it still, and there's some strain that happens as a result of it.
Okay. While Jayden's going up and down the stairs, you got any? You got anything to say about caffeine in your experience at all? Like if you ever
I was
used it
going
in
up.
your life?
I was going down the elevator, the escalator.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
All right.
That's
Well,
like
as you can tell, I don't really need caffeine, but um, yeah. So
Hey, this man has the natural energy, bro.
I find that I find that what helps is caffeine doesn't really always hit like all the time. It would just hit me like once in a blue moon. Sometimes if I take too much, I would gain anxiety, and I'm a very anxious person, so it doesn't really help. And I would have to say that honestly, just once in a while, if I do take it, it may or may not help depending on how energized I am. And like with me and Darshil was talking about taking it earlier in the day before you enter the session. So let's say that you take it a little bit earlier, like maybe like 2, 3 hours earlier, and then you're already like hyping yourself up. You're getting that adrenaline, like so you're actually just mixing the caffeine. Um, I would say like caffeine influence of like adrenaline, and you're a natural adrenaline, and it's basically just making you like a superhero at that point. You know what I'm saying? So I
yeah.
have dealt with that where I've gotten out of work because I used to work at a cafe, and I would bring espresso shots. I would take like two, sometimes three, and then yeah, very terrible. It does not taste good. And then I would either get anxiety or I would be really pumped up and I would jump like a maniac. So yeah.
Mhm.
But
Nice.
sometimes if I have enough adrenaline, which I do, I'll jump the same way or without it. So everybody's different. We're our own person. So for me, it doesn't necessarily affect me too much. Sometimes in a negative way, but for other people, it may be the secret.
Yeah,
No one size fits all.
that is true. As we're gonna talk about here, Darshil, let's go through the research findings we found, and we'll talk about them in
Yeah,
depth on how
we
it is
found
to dunk.
28
Well, no, no.
articles.
I think the way we
We
could best
found
put it, we we found around 28 points of reference that we then got from 8 sources that we were using that are all based off of research studies varying different topics that we wanted to discuss in terms of caffeine. So one of the things that we actually looked into in terms of caffeine was looking at the general consensus of when you want to consume caffeine, like just before bedtime, like how it affects sleep and such, right? And according to, I think, a study that was done, let me just make sure I got the right
Me and
guy
Juan
here.
look like brothers right now.
2023, right?
I think no, yeah, Gardiner was 2023, D'Souza was 2022, I believe, for that.
Yeah.
Me and
Okay.
Juan look related right now.
But
Because we have
yeah,
the
it would,
default. I shouldn't say that, but we have the default hair.
Yo,
For
but your
but
eyes are like the same distance as mine. I just realized that.
Yo,
let's walk in, brothers. What are we doing?
what are you talking about, bro?
That's my cousin right there.
Oh, it's because we
But
got the tank top. That's what you're talking
all
about,
right,
bro. I didn't.
back
That
back
dude,
back on topic though, right? Typically, you're going to see deep sleep, which is where we get most of our recovery, both mentally and physically speaking, get reduced as a result of having caffeine. You're going to have a lot more wakefulness and light sleep. And just in general, you want to avoid having caffeine like 8 to 13 hours before bedtime. And when we look at energy peaks in general, the average is usually around 30 to 60 minutes after intake, of which you get like peak alertness and peak arousal. But as Jayden said, sometimes alertness does can't take can't keep it in. Alertness can sometimes take a little longer, as Jayden said, in terms of being able to get to that point. And it also depends on how fast your metabolism is or what specific genetics you have in terms of your response to caffeine. For example, there is an enzyme called the CYP1A2 enzyme, which was found by, I think, a study in 2018, I believe.
Guessed.
I'm pretty sure it was in 2018, but it was
Yeah.
basically studying a genotype called CYP1A2 and how it affected athletes, particularly in endurance. And while endurance athletes aren't what we are, it is still worth looking into in terms of how it affects us depending on who we
the long
are.
sessions, right?
Hmm?
And the longevity of the sessions. It's
Exactly. Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
important, regardless.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like one thing that people.
But
It's
but
like
then,
you don't
oh
want to
yeah,
peak for a time. And endurance does help. So being able to have like a good baseline that just lasts for hours, it really does help rather than just having one big boost and next thing you know you're just peaking for like 10 minutes and the rest
that's
is
true.
doo doo. So
But
definitely
But as I said before, in terms of half-life, like for me personally, I found that I think the 5 to 6 hour thing that you find in most searches is what I get. But as could be seen maybe through Juan, right? I wouldn't know the specific half-life. You would probably have to do a lot of like complex studies to do so. But you would probably be like around the higher range if it's really bad, if it's like kind of hard for you to go to sleep. Typically, the half-life of
Probably.
caffeine can be yeah, the half-life of caffeine, according to studies that we found from I think a study in 2024 by StatPearls, has as low as like 1.5 hours to around 10 hours, of which you're basically having some amount of caffeine still in your system.
Yeah. I want to talk
And then,
about like. Go ahead, finish up, and I want to talk about something.
yeah, did you want to talk about some of the
Just what
effects,
we
I
already
guess?
talked about, like how I can relate to some of the things that we've already said.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You can go ahead then.
Yeah. So yeah, with the if the bedtime, like doing it before like 8 to 13 hours before bedtime, I definitely relate to that. It's taken me, like I said in the beginning, I've been taking caffeine more in the morning as of recently. Like whenever I do take it, it'd take me exactly around 12 hours for it until like I start getting like the crash. Basically, it's like it'll take me 12 hours before I get tired. Like I literally take it at 6 a.m. And then I'll get tired at 6 p.m. Or if I take it at 8 a.m., I'll get tired at 8 p.m. So that's like I'm pretty like responsive, like more relevant to the research studies. And then 30, yeah, I also relate to 30, 60 minutes after intake. That's definitely when I feel like my caffeine is like peaking. So I usually like to take it like right before I work out if it's earlier in the morning, but if it's later in the morning, I'm definitely gonna have trouble sleeping later. And genetics is definitely very, dude. I have a friend that I have two friends actually that they take caffeine. They took in like 200 milligrams before. It did nothing to them. Like so yeah, some people it literally does nothing to them. I have a fast metabolism, so I don't know if a faster metabolism relates to having a more being more sensitive to caffeine because I'm
Would
very sensitive to caffeine
would
for
you
sure.
say that if you're a person who has a little bit more weight to them, that you would believe that they would have more saturation in the fat
What do you mean?
from the caffeine?
I don't. Wait, what do you mean? I'm confused.
Like, like, you know how there's let me explain it. Like, would you say that due
Because
to
like I
like
ideally short term, right? You are going to see like weight loss more so than anything else because of the thing that's happening, which is like fat oxidation or some shit like that. But I think long term, what you're saying makes sense, right? Because it actually does lead to some amount of excessive consumption, which could lead to weight gain.
Mm.
would you say
But
that a person who has a faster metabolism would feel the effects faster than someone who has a slower metabolism?
it would have to depend on other factors as well. You do typically tend to see that faster metabolisms, you do get that quicker dosage of caffeine in their system than people who have slower metabolisms, from what I found.
I think he has a fast metabolism. Oh yeah, yeah. That's pretty fast, man. But
But
yeah, and the half life, I think I have like a general like 5 to 6 hours, but I'm not 100% sure to be honest. That I don't know. But yeah, you can go ahead with that.
I guess we can also talk about the fact of something that was a little interesting that I actually wanted to just see briefly if it was a decent talking point to talk about. But there was also something from I think the ISSN position stand study that was done in 2021, where it said that in mid competition, if you took caffeine, it would also improve endurance there, especially if you have like late stage fatigue while you're in a session. And I was wondering like if you guys have ever done that, like taking caffeine during the session.
Ooh, I think I don't know if I've done that before. Like I think I have, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did have like an effect. Like it definitely helped. Oh, you know what's funny? My latest session, the one that kind of messed me up for these next few months, my highest jumping session ever, and I didn't even make a dunk. That one, I noticed how high I was jumping before I even took caffeine because I wasn't like planning on it. Because the week before I couldn't even jump, because I was in pain. But this week I felt no pain, so I was already jumping high. So then I just took the caffeine to try and jump even higher, and I guess it definitely worked for a bit. So I think that's definitely mostly true for most people.
See, the thing for me is that I wish I could do it, but as you guys can tell, I got braces. So
Yeah.
if I took any type of caffeine, if it was coffee, the only caffeine I could probably take is pills, right? But if I took coffee or any energy drink, I would have to wash that stuff out. So it's just counterintuitive for me to do it at this point in time.
Yeah,
But
and I'm using myself in as example for most people. Cause
I
yeah,
guess
I feel very generally.
while we're in this conversation, Juan, can you actually look into because you take an L-theanine based caffeine supplement, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you mind looking into it while I describe some more other stuff? So, and then you could
yeah.
talk
Go
about
ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
All right. So, typically speaking, right, going back into the studies that we find that the ergogenic dose or the dosage of which you're enhancing performance typically goes from like around 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of weight. So let's say, for example, I weigh like around 126, 127 pounds. So I'm somewhere around 57 kilos. So if you were to basically do the multiplication for that, my general dosage that I should be taking in order to enhance my performance would be around 171 milligrams of caffeine, all the way up to 342 milligrams of caffeine. That high amount is right to where I've individually saw it, but I think the lower end is a little bit more closer to 120 milligrams is where I start to see the ergogenic effect. But um, it's a good like basis of figuring out where you should probably take the caffeine to best at least see where it would affect you positively. But yeah,
Wouldn't
you
that
guys
mean
can.
that your number would be lower though? Like the 120 milligrams, you said you start feeling it rather than what it says on the calculations of the 170. So
So
wouldn't that
yeah,
mean that
I
it's
mean,
like, wouldn't that mean that's the minimum rather than the 170 being the minimum because of the
well,
fact that you feel
well,
it?
you would have to account for individual factors. That's why I said the 120 thing. Generally speaking, you want to see those like that range, right? But sometimes some people operate under a lower range and higher range. So it's a general consensus of where you can start from and then pretty much experiment and find where you actually can be, in my opinion at least. But I guess just looking through more of the studies right now, some of the negative effects that that you will see that we briefly also talked about include cardiovascular ones. So typically you're going to have a higher blood pressure and heart rate that starts happening. So I think out of all of us, or pretty much all of us, have had some amount of palpitations when we take in caffeine in some way.
Yeah. That could be a high heart rate could be either negative or positive, honestly, because
Oh
that
yeah,
same
yeah, yeah.
thing that causes us anxiety is the same feeling that you get for adrenaline. It's
True.
very similar
Yes.
feeling. It's just you'll feel a different way when you get the anxiety. Although you're gonna have similar, I guess your heart rate is gonna be similar.
Uh, I suppose, yeah. I would have to look more into it to like
That's
see
true.
the specifics of it, but in both cases, yeah, what Jayden said is also kind of right in terms of the fact that the same thing that you're going to see that is leading to anxiety is also going to be the same thing that you're going to see in terms of when you're at your most peak alertness and arousal. But some of the other negative effects that I think we also talked about, one of them that I've actually dealt with the most out of the three of us is probably gastrointestinal issues. So for me, that's typically been feeling nauseous or having some amount of acid reflux that has come in some sessions that I've done. And it's typically happened when I've had higher dosages, but it can sometimes happen if I don't have certain nutrients that you probably want to take in when you consume caffeine. And in terms of other effects, there's of course dependency and withdrawal symptoms that some people have. So having headaches and fatigue or irritability. And Juan, I think you know some people that you personally talked to that have had issues with those,
Not that I've personally talked to. Which one
or at
again?
least you
'Cause
know.
I can name for all of them.
I dependency and withdrawal. So like basically having headaches, fatigue,
Oh,
irritability.
okay. So I watched the Dunk Talk podcast. Hunter said he had like headaches when he would take caffeine. Like, and it was in the Florida Dunk session one that he talked about that. So
Mm.
personally, like I know, like he has had that from what I've seen, but I don't know about anybody else specifically.
A crazy thing is that caffeine could either cause or it could either help headaches because there is caffeine in Excedrin, and Excedrin is proved to help headaches. So that is definitely something that's interesting that we could look more into.
For sure. I think if
That is,
someone could, I
yeah.
guess I guess this is the best way to segment it. If you've gone to the 24-minute mark or somewhere around there at this point in time, can you guys should definitely like, subscribe, and if you commented and gotten this far, tell us what you guys
Like,
know.
subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. Spread the
Exactly.
knowledge of this podcast.
Spread
We're
it.
trying to get up there. We're trying to get up there.
But what I was saying is
Future pro dunkers right here.
as
Darshil, Sheth, Juan Pescador, and Jayden Suarez.
but
We're gonna be future pros.
as I think Ben Bounce said that we should probably put like some kind of thing of what we're supposed to or what you guys are supposed to comment. So I guess just in this case, yeah, what Jaden was basically talking about in terms of the fact that sometimes caffeine can sometimes help headaches as well with Excedrin, and as much as it can cause headaches. So if you guys know anything about that, you can comment that below. But honestly, you can comment whatever you want. We appreciate the love that you guys got for all of
Yeah, and
us.
if you guys do find any knowledge or like articles, do let us know, and you could always shoot us in the DMs, or you could just shoot us in the comments, just giving extra knowledge and also citing where you got that evidence from, so we could just really look into it. Just to make
Basically,
sure.
all they saying is if you smart, comment below.
Exactly. Smart people, comment. Passionate people, comment too. We care about you also.
But I guess since you have a little bit of the floor, Jayden, I know that out of all of us, you probably maybe dealt with in terms of like at least caffeine consumption, you've probably dealt with, I guess, anxiety of some sorts, right? And when
Yeah.
you've had sessions with caffeine.
I guess you could say that's because I like maybe it's due to the fact that I do have like ADD. So someone with ADHD does go through like stress, depression, and anxiety, and really caffeine can really just heighten those things and make you more stressed in the long run. And it can also just cause that, what was I saying? The anxiety. It really can. But also on the other side of the spectrum, it really can boost your motivation and your adrenaline, and you could really start visualizing the things you want to do on the court, whether it's playing basketball or dunking. Just by getting that extra boost in your system.
For sure. And I think this is gonna be the last thing I'm gonna be yapping about. I think I've yapped a lot on this on this episode, but the last thing that I think we found was, I guess, going on the topic of adrenaline. Adrenaline goes off of a chemical that we have, hormonally speaking, called epinephrine, which improves performance by being able to enhance energy mobilization. So that's the glucose and fatty acids that we'd be using, increasing muscle blood flow and heart rate positively to that adrenaline, and having almost like a reduced perception of pain and fatigue, which you're going to see in most jump sessions that you had. My sources for those our sources for those that we use was the ISSN position stand in 2021. That was there's a study there, as well as a StatPearls study that was done in 2024.
And if you guys want to
And
look on this information yourself, we could put some of the citations in the description. Just check it out.
for sure, yeah.
If you guys want any more knowledge, or let's say that we're just looking for like something that, like, let's say we discuss something over the podcast and you want to know where it came from, you could just look in the description, or if we do miss something, you could just tell us and we'll put that citation down and the website it came from. Yeah.
It is it
Article.
is it is also worth noting that, like I said before, if you're going to talk about the people that get affected the most in terms of the largest improvements, you're going to see that the most in endurance sports, actually. Second to that would then be any sports that, of course, have a high amount of intent that you need to have for an activity. And one last thing before I stop yapping for the rest of the episode, as much as I have, is just the fact that if you're habitually consuming a lot of caffeine a lot, you are, of course, going to have a diminished return in terms of adrenaline responses. You can only consume it for so long to the point where the benefits still happen. But you could still see benefits. That's the thing. But you're not going to see increased amounts. So you should be careful. Don't consume caffeine too much and you should be fine.
This is factual information by Darshil Sheth. So now I'm going to continue here. We're also going to talk about L-theanine here because this is something that I have some experience with, and it definitely helps with the calm. Like, it has very good calming effects and is very well paired with caffeine. But necessarily you want to use more L-theanine than caffeine for it to last around the same amount, because I have this right here. This has 100 milligrams of L-theanine and 100 milligrams of caffeine. With my experience with this, the L-theanine dies out way earlier than the caffeine does. So then, like, halfway through, I'll start getting like more excited and stuff. And this is also shown. It's was not. What's the word? It's not. It's like the we don't use for proven. Whatever. It's supported by a few studies, but I'm gonna talk about this one here that actually talks about ADHD, the cognitive enhancing outcomes of caffeine and L-theanine, a systematic review. It actually talks about ADHD here and how it can basically like help, how L-theanine can help with that too. If you have ADHD and if you take caffeine and L-theanine, basically, yeah, it helps with sustained attention. So that's actually something like for, like not just like dunking, because it could actually probably help more with like probably trick dunks, so because you could probably focus more. This like helps with like enhanced attention and stuff like that. Which definitely helps with also studying as well, because it gives you that energy, and then like the L-theanine allows you to focus in and lock in more, basically. But then that's also something where if you want to feel jittery and you want to feel more like kind of like nervous and like that, then just taking caffeine alone would probably be better, because sometimes you intentionally want to do that rather than just take it with L-theanine. But it depends again on how caffeine affects you personally, with what we've already talked about in this episode. And yeah, it's just literally stuff like that, like the calming effects, like yeah, reduced like mind wandering, balanced brain activity, which is talked about in this study. Effects on L-theanine caffeine combination. It's Chanaka. Yeah, I don't know. This was in 2020. It looks like August 2020, but yeah, it's just stuff like that basically. And again, the effective dosage of L-theanine with caffeine is going to be around like 50 to 100 milligrams more than however much caffeine you're using for it to be more effective, at least for longer periods of time. So yeah, that's pretty much all it is with L-theanine. It just adds some calming effects and allows you to focus in and not be so like jittery, so too excited, too nervous or anything if you have problems with that. So yeah.
Yeah, guys, this is probably the first, I think, podcast that we've done like probably this much of a detailed, like study into things. If you guys like this kind of stuff, again, just like comment it so we could do
And we
more
do our
podcasts
research
like this.
beforehand. We're not talking out of our butts. I'm not gonna say that's a bad word. We're not
But
talking straight out of our
We're not
beehole.
speaking out of our a-holes.
Exactly.
but if you guys want more podcasts where we do like these kind of deep dives, just definitely comment it because we could definitely do more of these depending on the topics that you guys would like us to really go over. But
Yep. Yeah.
in any case,
So
guys, yeah, you can end it off one.
yeah, we'll end it off. Studies in the description, socials in the description. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you are on Spotify, give us 5 stars. And yeah, follow us, do your thing, check out our socials, check out our journeys. We're gonna be posting more often. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. We'll see you guys in the next podcast. Peace out.
Peace.
See you guys.